is a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump. Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Well, happy Tuesday, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and of course, we are still awaiting the Supreme Court opinion in the Dobbs case, and that may be handed down tomorrow. So we're going to be doing a very special episode on where's the Supreme Court at. I'm going to make a prediction. We'll see if this is accurate, but I don't think that we're going to have the opinion tomorrow. I think the justices are going to release that later in the month, probably one of the very last things that they do. So will it reflect Alito's leaked draft? We'll see. But tomorrow we're going to discuss where's the Supreme Court and what about all of the opinions that they've released yesterday, and then the forthcoming opinions, which could include the Dobbs opinion tomorrow. So make sure that you are subscribed to the Jenna Ellis Show wherever you stream podcasts or on our Rumble or YouTube channel, because you never want to miss an episode. So, of course, we are dealing with so much with the Biden administration. They want us to focus on the Second Amendment. They want us to focus on, all of these other things and continue as conservatives to always play defense. But we need to go on the offense and actually point out the things that the Biden administration are doing that are utterly wrong and ridiculous. And that kind of includes the market. It includes inflation. And so since I am not an expert on all things finance or crypto, of course, need to bring on an expert to break this down for us. So I'm very excited to welcome Tho Bishop, who is the assistant editor for the Mises Wire. So Tho, thank you so much for joining me today. And first of all, what's your take on the market in general and what we've seen Friday through the beginning of this week?
Yeah, what we have right now, it's kind of the empire strikes back, if you will. You have a lot of people that have invested in crypto, invested in stocks, and they're seeing, their life savings go down the drain. And a big part of that comes to concerns about what the Federal Reserve is going to be doing this week. There was a Wall Street Journal report over the weekend about how the Fed is considering a 0.75% increase in the interest rate, which would be a very significant move. That's a very aggressive move from the Fed. And so what that is resulting in is people panicking, kind of a flight to dollars away from stocks, away from crypto, away from these financial investments that have been relying upon cheap credit for a very long time. And that is why we're seeing it kind of across the board right now, a lot of people feeling financial pain on top of the inflationary issues that we're seeing at the gas pump, grocery store, everywhere else.
So how is the inflation, and of course, with everything that the Biden administration is doing and, giving $40 billion to Ukraine instead of actually using our taxpayer dollars for, hey, American citizens, that seems rational to me. But how can people understand how inflation actually impacts the market and how this fear of investing and how people are now not spending as much actually is affecting the market and specifically crypto?
Yeah. Well, in particular, there's kind of two different types of inflation to think about. Again, one is price inflation, and that's gas prices go up. That's the food aspect. That's it eating away at your paycheck, right? And that's very, very bad. We've seen it. We're at historic highs right now, over 8% by official numbers. They've got some fun ways that they mess around with the official numbers, have for a very long time. So the real pain are out there. There's my wife is a caterer. She's seeing her food costs go up double digits, right? So that is one aspect of the inflation issue. And that's obviously being very politically damaging to the Biden administration. There's nothing that's a kitchen table issue more than that. The problem is that so the Fed's reaction to it is to increase interest rates. And in theory, that's kind of like stepping on the brake in a car, right? That's supposed to slow down the economy. And the goal is that when you do that, when you slow it down, inflation will go down with it. The problem is that there's this other aspect of inflation. And while we've been seeing the price inflation really pick up the last 2 years, the issue is that this other inflation, asset inflation, has been going on really since 2008. Because we pumped in a whole bunch of money after the financial crisis. We bailed out the banks. We then paid the banks not to lend us money. That's a whole major part of kind of the divide between how DC and Wall Street and California has been doing and mainstream America's not. There's a big financial component to that. And what that's done is they were pushing Americans, if you had money in your bank account, as savings, right? You think of a CD or something like that, you weren't getting anything for it, right? That the Fed was robbing you of the ability to save in a traditional bank. That's what pushed everyone to go find these alternative investments. That's what pushed people to go on Robinhood and start, day trading stocks. That's what pushed them into crypto and these other assets. And what that's done is that because they had your people are searching for returns on their money, on their savings, that is what's led to this massive bubble. And so this is a major disruptive force. There's decisions for well over a decade have been made based off of this very, very low interest rate environment. And so if we're going to get to something that looks normal, if the goal is to get inflation down and to get control of that, it's going to do damage elsewhere. The number of tech companies that have never been profitable, that are relying upon cheap debt, there's a lot of them. And then it's not only those companies that are concerned, but think of how many people that are invested in those companies. Think about pension funds and insurance companies that would historically buy government bonds or safe assets that have now been binging on more risky assets like stocks. That we have subsidized risk in the financial economy based on what the Federal Reserve's been doing since 2008. And we are seeing it now play out, the consequences of that, when we're trying to get the inflation side, the daily price inflation side under control. And doing so, we're going to see just how bad the rest of the economy's been when, again, addicted to those low interest rates.
Yeah. So where do you think the Fed is making a wrong decision? And I guess a couple of questions here. What can the Fed do now with the inflation that would change the trajectory of the economy? And second, did that occur during the Trump administration? Of course, since 2008 and the whole, problem that we had in the whole, basically the economic collapse during Obama. And then did Trump help with that? And now we're just seeing a relapse because of the Biden administration's decisions?
There were policies, the Trump tax plan, the deregulatory policies. These were things that made a real impact on the real economy. And that's where you started seeing workers' wages go up for the first time in years, right? Those were policies that had a real impact on the economy. And what you saw at the time was Jay Powell, the Fed chair, he started to try to normalize the extreme Fed policies that it's the low interest rates as well as the balance sheet of the Fed, the debt that they hold, the stuff they bought from big banks and things like that. He was letting those assets kind of roll off the balance sheet. The problem is the stock market didn't like it. And so what happened is that Powell pivoted when the stock market complained about it, basically. And it was right before 2018, a very politically charged moment with the midterms, right? So it is there is an aspect there where Biden's policies on oil, on the regulatory side, on the spending, these things have made things a lot worse. Areas where the Trump administration was much better on. But ultimately, behind the scenes, the Fed component has been bad throughout the entire tenure. And really, it's an intellectual problem. It's if you hire someone who thinks like a traditional Federal Reserve banker right now, you're going to get someone who doesn't appreciate the danger of these low interest rates policies. There's been a very broad consensus on this issue. And so the problem is that right now, I think what the Fed is indicating is a probably the best move that they have, right? The problem is there's going to be pain. When we look at business cycles, when we look at booms and busts, we get focused on the bust, right? We get focused on the Great Depression, the Great Recession. The problem is that the issue is the bubble. It's everything that has led up to that. And the problem is that we've had a very extreme Fed going back to the Bernanke Yellen years. If you want to look back and see where that miscalculation was, it was when Bernanke doubled down on emergency era policies after the financial crisis. It was about 2009, 2010. Yellen continued them. It was that double down when things were normalized but not performing as well as the Obama administration wanted. That is what sowed the seeds that we're dealing with now. And I think Powell, who was a Trump appointee, I think he's much smarter than Bernanke and Yellen. I think that he comes from an industry background. He's not purely an academic. The issue is that once you're in that chair and the choice is wrecking the global economy or restoring normalized monetary policy, That's a very difficult situation to be in. And I don't fault him for pivoting backwards on that. But as difficult as that is exactly the situation America finds itself in now. And if we're going to get inflation under control, there's going to be a lot of damage, and it's going to hurt a lot of innocent working people that were pushed into these investments based off of our own government policies. And that's the biggest thing. The inflationary problems we have right now, this isn't the consequence of Putin. This isn't a consequence of bad luck. This is the consequence of government policies led by people with dangerous ideas. And until we get to that core of the issue and change those ideas, then we're going to continue this pattern of trying to kick the can down the road.
And what are those really dangerous ideas? What is the basic outlook of where their policies are set that you find troubling that are now leading to this economic collapse?
Well, one of the things we've seen is, I think it's a reflection of sort of the illiberalism of our elites in general, right? They want to confiscate our guns because they don't trust us to defend ourselves. They want to silence us on big tech platforms because they don't want to have a marketplace of ideas. There's a recognition that money in the banking system is the biggest tool the government has, right? We saw it play out with the Canadian trucker situation, right? Where the Trudeau regime confiscated money being donated. We've seen it play out in America, right? Where we've seen conservative activists debanked from the financial sector. We've seen, I think it was Bank of America was like sending in information about customers that were around in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, right? Yeah. And part of this is a consequence of the war on terror, right? We started off weaponizing the banking system against Al-Qaeda. And who could complain? Because Al-Qaeda is bad. And why wouldn't we use this weapon to stop them? And then we started using it against Iran and North Korea. And why wouldn't we do that? Because these are obviously bad rogue actors. The problem is, and now this is the number one tool we're using against Russia. And again, who could complain about that because Putin's a bad guy? The problem is that tools used abroad get turned back home. And so we're seeing these financial weapons no longer targeted to the Middle East, they're targeted to Middle America. And there's a dynamic here. You're seeing it across the board where if they remove cash from society, right? That's one little measure where we can make exchanges, we can do transactions that are difficult to tax, they're difficult to follow. There's been a lot of very, very, very PhD, super serious scholars talking about the need to eliminate cash from society because they recognize that creates issues for the government. Another problem with cash is that if you have negative interest rates, which some countries have done, Europe has done this, Japan has done this, even Switzerland has done this, that's a tax on your savings, right? A negative interest rate is if you keep money in the bank, you'll get taxed for not spending it. They are the financial, they view being able to control the spending patterns of Americans as a very important tool. And the problem is that saving matters, right? Saving gives us security in times of crisis, right? Savings is the foundation of civilization. It's the idea of planting a tree that your grandkids are going to get to enjoy and that you may never pick fruit from, right? This is a cultural civilizational aspect. And what they want to do is they want to be able to control and prevent you from saving. They want to be able to track the way you spend their money. And that way, if you fall out of step with the regime, they can remove you from civilized society in much the same way that we've seen the Communist Party of China do. And this is why when you hear discussions about central bank digital currency, this is a very scary thing because that gives them complete control over the economic sphere of our life. And that's very, very big. This is why you've seen a lot of interest in things like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's greatest value isn't necessarily the technology behind it, right? There's Ethereum, there's other cryptocurrencies that have these fancy, smart contracts and all these kind of neat things. Bitcoin's good at one very big thing. It can't be censored. It can't be taken down by the state. We've seen this play out. China hasn't been able to take it down. When there was hyperinflation in Venezuela, Venezuelans were using it. India had a currency crisis. They were using it. That's the value that Bitcoin can provide. And that's why this larger issue is, but there's a lot of other cryptocurrencies that are more scamish and can give Bitcoin a bad reputation. You have different projects that can be built around Bitcoin. Some of those are what are feeling the pressures right now with the financial environment. And I think there's a lot of naivete out there from, think of like the Andrew Yang sort of tech bro who likes to talk about Bitcoin to make it seem like he's hip, or like Jack Dorsey or some of these people. The issue is that when you recognize that control of the money is so important to the regime, anything that challenges that control is going to be seen as a hostile act. And we've seen this ramp up with the attempts of regulating Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. We've seen the attacks on crypto as, oh, it's bad for the environment. Oh, it's being used by the alt-right. Oh, every month there's a new sort of slam against this product. And it's precisely because, in theory, it is something that can strike right to that core of the power that comes of controlling the money supply. And again, that's why a lot of people talk about gold in the past. This is why Ron Paul was a big in the Fed guy. If you're skeptical of government, money is a key tool to that.
Yeah, and you should be. And this is where I feel like there's almost this disparity of focus there on the money and the control of society and what's going on in the financial world versus what's going on in what people would consider pure politics and policy, because there's so much on the nightly news, pick your outlet, of what's going on with the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, free speech, all of these things that and races and midterms and all of that. But there's not a lot of discussion. You have your financial minute or kind of your Wall Street update or some of those things, but there's not really a crossover of why the Fed is doing what they're doing. And do you think that the way that they are making the decisions that are impacting cryptocurrencies are a direct impact or a direct challenge to their hate of the fact that they can't control cryptocurrency, and their ultimate goal is to control financial institutions to ultimately control us?
Absolutely. And this particularly is on display when you look at the ECB and some of these other foreign actors. As bad as the Fed is, I think that there are more people within the SEC and the Fed that are more crypto friendly than most. I don't think they make up the majority, but I think that America still, in spite of all that bad stuff I just talked about, the reason why the dollar is still strong and is still where people are fleeing to for safety is because, as bad as the Fed is, all the other central banks are worse. The ECB is a lot worse. The Bank of Switzerland is not quite as good as it used to be. China is crazy with the way that they deal with their money. Japan is in a major crisis in their own right. So we're still, in spite of all of our flaws, still the best game in town. But you listen to what like Christine Lagarde and some of these IMF, WEF sort of folks, and they're very explicit on the way that they see Bitcoin as a threat to their power and something that must be destroyed. But you're right also as well as about the degree to which we don't really talk about money as an issue. And this is intentional. It's the entire goal. Alan Greenspan was really good at this. He would go in front of Congress and he would speak for 3 hours and no one in the room would understand what he was saying. And everyone afterwards would praise him for a genius because he must obviously be, because he used a bunch of big words that I don't understand. And what's funny is that you go back and you look at the transcripts of the way that the Fed Board of Governors talks amongst themselves. They can be a lot more frank. Like, you can actually understand that. It is a deliberate attempt to make it seem like this issue is too complicated for us normal folks to understand. Because if we think like that, it's a lot easier for them to do what they're doing.
Absolutely. And then we kind of ignore it because we think, oh, well, we can't understand it and let's just stick to the basics of what we know. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't want to admit what they don't know and they don't want to ask questions. And so how can people who are interested in preserving and protecting liberty, whether they're, Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or whatever, or even moderates, I think a lot of people in the United States, even I've talked to, a few of my Uber drivers who have said, I've voted Democrat in the past and I'm looking at this and I'm filling up my gas tank. I'm not doing that again. So there are a lot of people who are very concerned about this. What questions should we be asking and how can we be more informed on these issues?
One of the things, just taking a little bit of time of understanding, the history of money just a little bit. There's a great book called "What Has Government Done to Our Money" by Murray Rothbard that kind of looks at the long history of this. And we're actually doing a video series. It's a 9-part animated series at whathasgovernmentdonetourmoney.com. It's one of the projects I've been working at with the Mises Institute. But obviously, we should be thinking about the way that money is taxed. That's one of the big challenges. That's one of the big advantages the dollar has, is that savings in dollars, there's not a tax there beyond, the income itself. When the traditional tax system, right, which is simply holding cash, it's not a tax on. You do have that tax if you make money off of selling Bitcoin or gold. I think that's one of those aspects going forward. I would love to see a conversation about rolling back those taxes to make it easier for normal Americans to save in non-Fed inflated assets. Again, not the best time to be talking about that with Bitcoin's price where it is right now, and I understand that. But these sort of systemic things help provide protection for normal people to find other ways of saving their money outside of playing with what the Fed wants us to do. I think there's a level of independence there that's important. But then, just we have to start at some point, get serious about spending, start getting serious about all the fiscal issues that we keep kicking down the line. The other side of it, though, is just recognition that ultimately Washington's not going to save us on these issues. Ultimately, we have a responsibility ourselves to figure out, where can we save? How can we take care of our families and our neighbors outside of politicians coming in and fixing the economic cycle? And I think if we start thinking more from that self-resilient standpoint broadly, I think that can help strengthen, a large segment of the population, and anyone that really cares. And particularly if you've got kids, if you've got nieces and nephews, if you've got a stake in the future, then you owe it to yourself to start focusing on self-reliance in a financial system that's increasingly rigged against us. And that's something that takes time. It's a lot of responsibility. It takes a lot to knowledge and confidence to do that. But there is no, we're not going to vote ourselves out of this. Ultimately, it's going to come from us being part of the solution on our own right.
Yeah, and understanding that is the essential point of the American dream, is self-reliance, and recognizing that when our founders said that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is all about self-reliance and making sure that we are making the decisions that are best for ourselves and our families. And we're not relying on government. We're not relying on Washington to do the will of the people. And even, among a lot of the conservative right, it's really troubling to me to see how much we are looking to politicians and to people in Washington to solve all of the problems. I mean, even if you look at something like the LGBT agenda and drag queen story time in education and things, and they're looking to Washington to make all of these solutions rather than just good parenting and saying, I'm going to not allow my kids to be exposed to that. I mean, there's something that people can do on the home front and at the direct line of impact, regardless of whether there's a policy or a law against it. I mean, and I always say the same thing about abortion. Yeah, we need to fight for it to be illegal, but we need to fight first to make it unthinkable. Because if we changed the worldview and the perspective of people and reoriented it to traditional American values and ultimately to the biblical worldview and the understanding of why our founders created a society that was built on human flourishing and all of these rights that we understand come from God, then we wouldn't need government to be as big as it is, which was the whole point in the beginning and of this country. And so where do you think we're at in terms of the ability for people today to consider some of these foundational concepts and not just look at one aspect or another kind of in this piecemeal, but to see comprehensively the whole, and also how the financial market and our concept of money and our concept of individual responsibility is playing into this? I mean, when you look at, kind of our generation and the future generations, where are we at with this?
Yeah, I think any sort of solution that kind of is based upon, we're going to take over DC and then we're going to snap our fingers and we're going to wield power and force. We're going to create a conservative deep state that's going to end up restoring America back. I don't think it's going to work for a variety of reasons. Washington DC, I don't think you're going to see any flowers springing from what is going on right there. I think there is a more interesting dynamic where some of the roles that states can play in trying and challenging the Biden administration. I think what DeSantis has done, obviously on the healthcare front, fighting back against Fauci. I think that there is some interesting dynamics there. We're using Republican state governments as a foil to the federal government. Can perhaps be an interesting tool there. One of the things I think is interesting, though, about this money question, and this is what frustrates me with some of the conversations that come up with sort of the populist right, where they kind of want to throw out free markets and capitalism. And partly, I can understand it to a certain extent, right? I understand why people kind of roll their eyes at economics, right? There's been a massive failure within, quote unquote, serious economists on predicting a variety of things. I understand why it might be seen as simply propaganda for these globalist corporations or something like that. And I think, particularly when you see some groups kind of almost cheer on like big tech censorship, of conservatives because like they don't like the conservatives anyway. Like I understand why that leads to that frustration, but we can never lose sight of what sound economics really teaches you. And first and foremost, that's, who's ripping us off. And I think that framework is always important to keep in mind. More often than not, it is the state, it is the regime that is manipulating markets in a way to create these sort of outcomes. What would the behavior of big tech companies look like if they weren't so dependent upon monetary policy, if they weren't dependent upon a regulatory environment that allowed them to do what they wanted to do, if they didn't have the fear of of being penalized by the regulatory state. I think the world would look very different on that front. There's another dynamic though to this, is that when we think about what the Fed's been doing, monetary policy has been directly subsidizing the aspects of society that have been most hostile to conservatives, right? It's not simply the government that alone benefits from inflation. That money ends up being pumped into the school system, the academic system, academies, the higher education, right, which creates protections for woke professors and things like that. But that money end up pumped into all sorts of nonprofit groups and other sort of organizations and entities that have kind of progressive agendas out there. And so if we want to get serious about making sure that we're not subsidizing the people that are trying to impose their progressive ideas on us, I think we have to go back and understand where that process is coming from. And that comes to an appreciation for economics. And I think that ultimately free markets in capitalism requires sound money. If you have markets with a politically manipulated currency, you're going to get politically manipulated markets. So I think if we're looking for long-term solutions, systemic foundational solutions that can get us back to that sort of idyllic republic that America was founded to be, there's a reason why the founding fathers prioritized money. There's a reason why this was a major goal of Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson and kind of the original age of great American men. And if we ignore that issue in chasing some of the more exciting issues of the day, we're going to keep fighting these culture wars without a solution. And I think money at the end of the day, if done properly, that's one of those things that can really kind of restore meritocracy to the American experiment. And ultimately, I think that's what made us great in the first place.
Yeah, and that is such an important point, that all Americans need to have a basic understanding of money, of financial institutions, of what our founders understood for capitalism and free markets, and understanding how they can take responsibility for their own policies, and also for how they vote and what candidates think about these issues. I mean, I wonder how many people ask those types of questions, because we are so focused on some of the big ticket policy items, and those are definitely important. But also, we need to be concerned about the view on financial institutions. And that goes back to another really important point that you made earlier, which is that policy, even if it looks good and is being used to what we would think is a good end, weaponizing these financial institutions can ultimately have the precedent of being turned around on our own society and in ways that we never intended. I mean, it mirrors what we've been talking about with red flag laws, where I'm completely against those. I've never seen a red flag law that I think is constitutionally viable or sound, because we never, ever will punish a person just based on statistics or based on red flags before they actually go and commit a criminal act. And so to take away rights before people have even acted, just based on characteristics or inherent traits, is pre-crime, and it's completely unconstitutional. And so we can see how that would easily be manipulated to then be turned back against conservatives. If you voted in a certain way, if you call yourself a conservative, if you post on social media. But we're seeing that very same thing almost in a eerie similar sense of red flag laws being applied in principle to some of these financial institutions' weaponization, like when you see what happened in Canada, when you're seeing what happened to Mike Lindell, who was canceled by his own bank in Minnesota for having conservative beliefs and for having political opinions. And so where do you see these pitfalls in policy that conservatives should be aware of and be asking their candidates for government office, and be very concerned and vocal during the ballot, and especially in the midterms and beyond?
Yeah, this is it requires depoliticizing the banking sector. And the problem is that there's a lot of there's a lot of pressure for the financial institutions to effectively be the enforcement wing of the progressive agenda. And, we're seeing it, obviously, the banking side of things in just dealing with customer accounts and things like that. That's one aspect of it. We're seeing it play out with, SEG scores and the way that financial institutions treat energy companies. And, if you're going counter against the progressive agenda on climate change and things like that, your company is going to be financially punished because of this. This is why companies like BlackRock have become very important tools of the broader regime. Again, it's a private company, but it's used to project an ideological agenda onto the real economy and as an extension, us. One of the big issues, right, with the gas problem, gas prices, is that we haven't built a refinery in this country for decades because there's this constant fear that if you're making that long-term investment in something like an oil refinery, which is going to cost well over $1 billion to build, if that's going to be shut off in 10 years by some bureaucrats in DC, you don't have the stability to be able to make those sort of investments. And that is why we've got an economy that's not serving, American interests, or serving, globalist interests. And, what are the fixes for that in the short term? The problem is that a lot of this is dealt with from the regulatory level. And so personnel is policy. So often in these cases, can we see a complete a removal of sort of the professional class within these regulatory agencies? And could that end up leading to a change in the politicalization of these tools that they have? Maybe. I think that's hopeful thinking, but things have happened in the past. I would like to see ways of tightening down. I think that the current push for using fiduciary responsibility with some of the concerns, I know this has come up with the Twitter suit and some of the stuff with Elon Musk, right, where you see Twitter stockholders using their legal rights to challenge Twitter management for breaching their fiduciary responsibilities on that. I think those sort of things are very interesting tactics. And I'm just encouraged in general, the general recognition of the right that our issues can't simply be solved at the ballot box, that they must be dealt with systemically in this country, and that we've got to flex the rights that we do have. Thankfully, in the U.S., the justice system continues to hold up as being one of the better, firmer institutions. When this moment, this is why you're going to see, the pressures applied to the Supreme Court, not only on the abortion case, but all sorts of issues. Right, that's not going anywhere anytime soon, because the left recognizes that any justice system is necessarily a hindrance on all of their agenda items. So hopefully that will continue to be an outlet where conservatives can flex their muscles and reclaim some of their sovereignty back. But this is a large uphill battle from multiple fronts.
Yeah, it is. And I hope, as you were saying that, I was thinking as well, we need to be fighting these types of regulation, stuff like the ESG in corporations as an ideological battle. Because if those are things that we're requiring, our government is requiring companies to comply with, and it is ideologically based, it's not a neutral law of general applicability, at least in terms of the outcome. And so there needs to be these types of fights to say this is something where a certain ideology is being propagated onto these companies and these private institutions that reflect a specific viewpoint, and they're not viewpoint neutral, and they're for a specific outcome and purpose for the progressive left. And we do need to be challenging these things in court. We do need to be making sure that independent businesses and independent people can continue to be players in a free market that is truly free. And so the last question I have for you, and this has been a really fascinating conversation, and thank you so much for your perspectives on this. And I hope that all of my listeners are encouraged to get more information and to become even more educated on money, on financial institutions, and all of the policy and regulation surrounding this. But the last question I have for you is, so with all of this and everything that we've talked about, where do you see then the future of cryptocurrency when clearly the government and the regime doesn't like decentralized banking? They don't like it. They would regulate it or even abolish it if they could. Do you think that that's coming back, or is that something that they're going to effectively just create the circumstances where it's genuinely not viable?
I think most cryptocurrency projects are going to go to zero. I think most of them are not built to withstand the assault of the state. I think a lot of them, if they were not built intentionally to be scams, I think a lot of them were built with very false assumptions built in there. Again, a lot of naivete. onto exactly what the regime would allow them to do. I'm more optimistic about Bitcoin, but I think that it would be a mistake to have 100% certainty going forward about Bitcoin. There is risks there. Again, if you have a loss of confidence in it, which can come not only from a technical failure of the software itself or the blockchain, or compromising underlying tech, but if normal people don't feel comfortable using it, then its value as a alternative to politicized money is going to go down. Now, again, I see reasons historically that gives me optimism that it will survive this and continue to function the way it has in the past. Again, China has tried to crack down. They've not been able to do so from individual transactions. Often, it's the exchanges that are used in much the same way the banking system is, as a way of kind of tracking customers and things like that. And you need to understand there's always weaknesses with if you hold your Bitcoin on an exchange rather than in a wallet. Those are things that, as a responsible crypto user, you need to get familiar with. So I think Bitcoin is a product in itself, and I think that there's still, I think the need, the underlying need for having a currency that can't be manipulated by Federal Reserve bankers is more useful now than ever before.
Right.
And I think that demand is going to stay there. Everything else, though, I would be transitioning out of. Not here to make financial projections in the short term. Maybe you see a tip back up. If in the short term, right, I think you will see a major increase in prices if the Fed backtracks, right? If the Fed recognizes enough pain in stock markets and other assets, right, and if they lose their spine on tackling inflation and instead are trying to save the market, which again is a very interesting calculation going into the midterms. One of the biggest myths in American government is the independence of the Fed. The Fed has never been independent. There's always political calculations at play there. So that's something that I think in the short term could help rise up these assets again, and maybe that's a better time to sell than at the bottom. Take that for what it's worth. But in the long term, I'm still very confident about Bitcoin. It's everything else I'd be a little concerned about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Tho Bishop, thank you so much for your perspectives and your insights. And where can people find you and find the Mises Wire and follow all of your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter is where I'm most active, at Tho Bishop. It's a weird name, but THOBISHOP. And Mises.org, MISES.org, is where you can find the Mises Wire and everything that the Mises Institute produces. And again, What Has Government Done to Our Money.com is a short web series about the issue of money in the state. And if you find anything I've said here interesting, that series, you might find it interesting as well.
And is that already up on the website, or is that forthcoming?
Yeah, so we've got 4 videos up there now. We've got another 5 in production, but they'll be coming out soon.
Awesome. Well, I'll look forward to watching that, and that'll be next on my playlist. So thanks for that recommendation, and also the book recommendation. I always love recommendations from my guests who are so much more knowledgeable on certain subjects than I am, and can learn from that. So thanks so much, and really appreciate that. And friends, definitely stay in touch with this show. I get so many great recommendations for topics and things that you want to hear about. So you can always go to thejennaellisshow.com, and you can just click on the Contact Us link, and we review all of those emails. So if you have topics, suggestions, questions, concerns, comments, complaints, as my mom always says, then you can definitely reach us there. Make sure that you are subscribed to The Jenna Ellis Show on Rumble, YouTube, or anywhere that you stream podcasts, and I will see you tomorrow. Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. I also want to talk about another great American who is the sponsor of this podcast, and that, of course, is my good friend Mike Lindell. He has been canceled out of so many box stores for simply standing up for his own political opinion. And disagree or not, or support him or not, it is a fundamental right of every American to be able to voice their opinion, and that absolutely includes politics. That absolutely includes issues that are central to our culture. That includes faith. Mike is such a very sincere Christian, and I am proud to consider him a friend, and he is, of course, a friend of this show. So right now, there is a special on MyPillow.com. Click on the new radio listener specials. Get deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including a great towel set, which is a 6-piece set. It includes 2 bath, 2 hand towels, 2 washcloths, made in the USA, regularly $109.99, now just $39.99, but you have to use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. That tells Mike that you listen to this show, you're happy that he is a sponsor of this show, and you will get great discounts, but use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna, either at mypillow.com or call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna.